Woodrow Wilson, the 28th President of the United States, served 2 terms from 1913 to 1921. He is often remembered for leading the country through World War I, promoting progressive reforms and advocating for the League of Nations, although his presidency was also marked by significant challenges, including racial issues and political opposition. His life and career were deeply influenced by his academic background, his vision for a more democratic world, and his steadfast belief in the importance of American global leadership. Thomas Woodrow Wilson was born on December 28, 1856, in Staunton, Virginia, to Joseph Ruggles Wilson and Janet Woodrow. His father was a Presbyterian minister, and Wilson's early years were shaped by a strict religious upbringing. Wilson attended several schools during his childhood, moving with his family to Georgia and South Carolina before returning to Virginia. He later attended Princeton University, where he distinguished himself academically. Wilson earned a Ph.D. in political science from Johns Hopkins University in 1886, becoming one of the few U.S. presidents to hold a doctorate. His academic career continued with teaching and later serving as the president of Princeton University, where he pushed for reforms that modernized the institution. Wilson's entry into politics began in earnest in 1910 when he was elected governor of New Jersey. He campaigned on a platform of progressive reforms, promising to reduce corporate power and expand democracy. As governor, Wilson pushed through a series of progressive laws, including the establishment of a workers' compensation system and the implementation of direct primaries, which allowed voters to choose party nominees rather than party bosses. His success in New Jersey brought him national attention, and in 1912, Wilson was the Democratic candidate for president. He ran on a platform known as the New Freedom, which called for reducing tariffs, reforming banking, and breaking up monopolies. Wilson's opponent, incumbent Republican William Howard Taft, was unpopular, and the race was further complicated by a third-party challenge from former President Theodore Roosevelt, running under the Progressive Party banner. In a divided race, Wilson won a decisive victory, receiving 42% of the popular vote and securing 435 electoral votes. Wilson's presidency was marked by his efforts to enact progressive reforms. He pushed through Congress the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, which established a central banking system designed to stabilize the economy and regulate credit. He also championed the Federal Trade Commission Act, which created a commission to monitor business practices and prevent anti-competitive behavior. In addition, Wilson supported labor rights, signing into law the Clayton Antitrust Act, which strengthened antitrust laws and protected workers' right to unionize. Wilson's administration also made strides in expanding social programs. The Revenue Act of 1913, which lowered tariffs and instituted an income tax, was a significant part of his domestic agenda. However, his policies were not universally progressive. Wilson, who was raised in the South, had a complicated relationship with race. He supported segregation in federal offices, and his administration oversaw the resegregation of several government departments, which led to criticism from civil rights activists and African Americans. Wilson's second term was dominated by World War I. Initially, Wilson pursued a policy of neutrality, hoping to keep the United States out of the conflict. However, events such as the sinking of the British passenger ship Lusitania by a German U-boat in 1915 and the interception of the Zimmermann telegram in 1917, an offer from Germany to Mexico to join the war on their side, led Wilson to request a declaration of war from Congress. On April 6, 1917, the United States entered World War I on the side of the Allies. Wilson's vision for a post-war world was encapsulated in his 14 points, a proposal for a lasting peace Based on principles of self-determination, free trade, and the establishment of the League of Nations, an international organization aimed at preventing future conflicts. His idealistic approach earned him admiration in many parts of the world, but his attempts to shape the post-war settlement were met with resistance at the Paris Peace Conference in 1919. The Treaty of Versailles, which ended the war, included many of Wilson's ideas, but also included harsh terms for Germany, which Wilson had opposed. The League of Nations was established, but the U.S. Senate, wary of entangling alliances, refused to ratify the treaty, and the United States did not join the League. Wilson's second term was marred by declining health. In 1919, while on a national speaking tour to promote the League of Nations, Wilson suffered a debilitating stroke. He was incapacitated for several months, and his wife, Edith Wilson, effectively assumed many of the duties of the presidency. Wilson's health never fully recovered, and his presidency ended in 1921 with his successor, Warren G. Harding, winning the election in a landslide. Woodrow Wilson's legacy is deeply complicated. He is remembered for his leadership during World War I and his efforts to establish the League of Nations, which laid the groundwork for the creation of the United Nations after World War II. His domestic policies, particularly those in favor of progressive reforms, contributed to the transformation of the American political landscape. However, his legacy is also marred by his stance on racial issues, his support for segregation, and his failure to address the racial inequalities in America. Wilson died on February 3, 1924, at the age of 67. He remains one of the most studied and debated figures in American history, admired for his idealism and reformist spirit, yet criticized for his blind spots regarding race and his handling of post-war diplomacy. Woodrow Wilson's presidency stands as a pivotal chapter in the development of the modern United States, a nation at once dedicated to the ideals of democracy and often struggling to live up to them.